Hey, in this video, I'll be talking to you about how to rewire your nervous system, how to get your system out of survival into rest and digest, into your natural state. So if you have been living in survival for a long time, it can feel very difficult to break out of that. That's because the conditioning and the wiring has been programmed into you for probably a long time, and now it's very challenging to break out of that. So what I wanted to do in this video is to share with you 3 programs that are running you. You need to understand how survival is running you before you can change it, right? The awareness is very, very important. So I'm going to show you 3 ways it's running you, and then a couple of ways that you can rewire your system. To begin with, I just want to share with you an analogy which I think is quite accurate when it comes to living in survival mode. It might sound a bit extreme, but I liken it to a very fast train. So I think in Japan they have this bullet train or something, and it goes very fast, maybe 200 miles an hour. Now, living in survivals like that, you're just on autopilot. You're reacting to life, and you don't even know what you're doing. Most of it's happening automatically. A lot of your reactions aren't positive reactions. You react negatively or fearfully to most of life, and you can't stop it. Just like you can't stop this train that's going 200 miles an hour, you can't stop these responses and reactions. They just take you over. And that conditioning, like I said, the wiring, is very difficult to break that. Right? Because if you think about the energy that goes into survival, the energy is very powerful, right? Because if you're running for your life, that's a lot of energy needed. And like I talked about in my last video, people are running off these kind of survival hormones, and there's just a lot of momentum behind the programs. So understand the process out is not to just stop that 200 mile an hour train. It's to slow it down to a stop, you see. And that's really the emphasis I want to place on healing. It's a slowing down. But first things first, you need to understand the programs that are running you. And so I want to share with you 3 of these programs, and I want you to pay attention for how they show up in your own experience, because when you catch them, then you can start to change them. The first one is your threat detection system. Now, this is just a word I made up. Maybe it exists, maybe it's been used by other people, I don't know, but I use this term because I think it's quite accurate. Human beings are always detecting for potential threats. We're all doing it, even the people who aren't living in survival. There's this constant radar system scanning my environment, picking up on anything that might threaten me. Now, people who are not traumatized, who are not living in survival, their threat detection system may be on 20 out of 100. It's just like a program that's running in the background, right? But if anything catches their attention, maybe they hear a loud noise or somebody shout, then their attention goes up, right? They pay attention. But for the most part, that program is running in the background, and it is not in any way disturbing their normal functioning. It's like a program in the background. However, now you take someone who's living in survival, their threat detection system is maybe running at 80% out of 100. So now it's become a predominant program when it should have just been this software program in the background. It's now running their whole experience. They're out in life and they're constantly scanning for anything that might resemble a threat. Any small thing can set them off. Maybe you're in a social situation and you meet someone who maybe reminds you of someone from your past who perhaps you didn't have a positive relationship with. And now that sets you off. You might not even know why you don't feel comfortable around this person. But subconsciously, your threat detection system picks up on it and detects that it's a potential threat. And what happens when we start to pick up on threats, we zone in on them. And when we zone in on them, it's very difficult to break free of that, because there's usually an emotion underneath that, usually the emotion of fear. And now we start to feel anxious or scared or hypervigilant. And the thing with zoning in on things, that is not your true state. Your true state is more a sense of openness. If you were living in more of a rest and digest, a good way to know you are there is that you have this open focus. You're more relaxed. You literally take more of life in. You see more of life when you're not in survival. You see more opportunities. Something I actually heard a spiritual teacher talk about recently, and they said you should be touching all of your experience. You should be touching it all. Right? That's having an open focus. When you have an open focus, it changes the way your brain works. It actually sends signals to your system that it's safe. When you're constantly zoning in on things because of this dysfunctional threat detection you've got going on, that's telling your brain it's not safe. I've got to be hyper-focused and zone in on things, right? Potential threats. So just pay attention to your own threat detection system. Maybe when you're out in public, or maybe when you're at work, or I don't know, wherever you are, it's probably going to be ramping up. And that is not necessarily helping you. It's actually hindering you. It just needs to be in the background. You never lose it, right? Because I know sometimes people with trauma or living in survival are like, well, I won't be safe if I let go of this, my threat detection. No, like I said, it should just be running in the background. It's always there. You don't lose it, but you need to tone it down a little bit. So moving on, the second survival program that is running you, probably the hardest one to break free of, is your identity. So if you have been living in survival for a prolonged period of time, you have likely identified with certain characteristics. For example, a lot of people in survival might feel anxious or fearful. Maybe you feel powerless, or that other people are threatening. Now, these ideas or beliefs that you have probably become a part of your identity. You think or feel that they are really you, because every time you're in that situation, you feel scared. Every time you're around that person, you feel powerless. Now you might think, oh, well, I'm not very confident. I don't do what I want in life. I am anxious. I'm an introvert. All of these kind of labels you put on yourself, when none of them were actually true. The reality was the survival programming took you over, and you then identified with it. And the problem is, when we identify with things and we think they are us, they become self-reinforcing, like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because we keep reacting to the same situations in the same way, they just get wired in deeper and deeper and deeper. And then we can't see what we are beyond that. Because none of this negativity you believe yourself to be is who you truly are. They're just attachments. But in a funny way, they make you feel safe. They do, right? Because survival is the default program. The organism's highest purpose is just to survive. So anything you've been doing up to now has probably kept you safe. So you're just going to keep rerunning the same program, right? Because that's the safety program. That's the wiring. That's the conditioning. But none of these things are you, right? Hope that gives you some relief, just to know that any negativity, anytime you have a negative thought or there's a negative feeling attached to something, it is not true. It is not alignment with the truth. If you want to take it deeper, you are just awareness. You're not even a human being. You're just having an experience. That's the truth. That's what you might come to the realization of the deeper you go into this work. But you don't need to go that far if you don't want to. But trust me, that is a very freeing experience. To lose yourself is probably the best experience you can have in your life. So from that perspective, maybe being traumatized living in survival is actually a blessing. Because when you lose that and you're free of that, you will experience what happiness truly is. And it's here right now. Okay, so moving on to the third program, survival program that's running you, is just these automatic conditioned responses. Like I said at the beginning, like that speeding train is just taking over you. These conditioned responses take over you so quickly you don't even see it. This is the problem. This is why I shared the programs. Because when you can start to see it, that's when they take their hold. But most people, you're hijacked, you've gone autopilot, and now you're gone. You've lost yourself. But just to pay attention to the body. Something I mentioned in the last video, learn on relaxing your body, right? If you walk into a situation you know you're going to get triggered, work on keeping your system calm. Begin to pay attention to, oh, here's that automatic response coming up again. You'll probably feel it. It's all conditioning. It's all the way you've been wired, right? Because someone who's not living in survival can walk into the same situation and they will have a completely different experience because their wiring is different from yours. So just pay attention to the automatic responses that you have. And they might show up in so many different ways. Tension in the body. You might feel contracted. I don't know, you might start sweating. You might start shivering. I don't know, it can show up in so many ways. Hunching your shoulders up, that's a common one that I do sometimes. Shoulders go up. You've got to start to catch it and then relax it. So now let's get into a couple of strategies that will help with the rewiring process. So the first one is slowing down. Now, in the last video, I talked about the importance of presence. Presence is something you should be practicing, say, in meditation. Even when you're out and about, if you can do it. Slowing down is more of an activity you can practice when you are doing things, right? When you're cooking a meal, maybe when you're doing some work or when you're working out, to just slow down. I'm not saying you go super slow, but you just slow things down a touch. Take a breath. As you begin to slow things down a bit, you're now bringing in a little bit more consciousness. What before was an automatic conditioned response, you're just getting triggered and reacting. Now you take a breath, you slow it down. As you slow it down, that train that was going 200 miles an hour is now maybe going 150. As you bring more consciousness into your experience, you begin to catch more of these automatic responses. As you begin to catch them, you can actually stop doing them. You can begin to relax your body, right? Because as you begin to relax your body and you begin to catch these automatic responses, now you're taking control of the program, right? But until you can catch them, the program has control over you. The program is in control of you. This is the problem, right? So practice slowing down. It's a very powerful kind of mindfulness exercise. I'm not expecting you to start being mindful all day long, slowing down all day long. If you can do it, it's great. You'll actually experience a more fulfilling experience. You will. Because the moment right now is true fulfillment, always. You can be fulfilled doing the smallest things. But at the beginning, it can be hard. So practice with small things. When you're reading a book, like I said, when you're working out or cooking a meal, just do it a touch slower. Just practice it. You need this higher level of consciousness. That's what your system needs, right? The more of this peace and slowness and presence you bring in, that's what settles the system. And the second exercise I have for you, maybe a little bit more challenging, it's to embrace uncertainty. So the person who's living in survival is trying to control. They are scared. Fear is running their life. So by controlling everything, if I have control over as much as I can control with this threat detection system at 80%, then I might feel a bit safe. The opposite of that is living with uncertainty, is to let go. I understand this might sound scary, but you can practice with small things. I'm not suggesting you jump out of an aeroplane or do anything extreme, but just going to a new place, maybe hanging out with someone you haven't seen in a while, just doing something a little bit different that you don't normally do, because the survival conditioning wants to keep you in the known experience. A lot of people want to change their life, but they don't change anything about their moment-to-moment experience. True change comes when you start to have new novel experiences, right? You begin to train your system to realize that it's safe to have new experiences, right? That's how you condition yourself. That's how you rewire yourself, by having new experiences. And like I said, it don't necessarily have to be anything scary. Slowly over time, that rewires you, right? That starts to bring more peace to the system and you start to feel safe in different new places. That's when you kind of open up more. You start to experience more life, see more opportunities, right? The person in survival, living in survival, how can they see possibilities and opportunities in life when they're so zoned in on what they're afraid of, right? They can't, and you'll always stay stuck in survival mode, right? So practice slowing things down and just stepping out your comfort zone a bit. I know that's not easy all the time, but just start to introduce new experiences into your life. The worst thing you can do is to do the same thing every day over and over again, right? It's going to keep you stuck, right? It's going to keep reinforcing that survival conditioning. So try these exercises out. So that is everything I've got to talk about in this video. If you have anything to add, any questions, any comments, anything at all, hit me up down below. If you want to watch any more videos like this, please check out these right here. But until next time, God bless.